Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're drifting through a kitchen where the window holds the last stripe of evening like a ribbon, and the kettle hums the softest gossip over the pilot light while a tired clock remembers to be tender with the seconds. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like seeing our little constellation of night owls. Now, turn off the lights, maybe let a fan hum in the background, and let's begin tonight's journey together. Keaton is perched on the edge of my kitchen chair, pretending the cushion is a springboard. He's 19 in the way that keeps one foot in boyhood and the other in a sneaker that thinks it's a passport. I'm stirring tea, practicing patience with the lemon peel. When he says it casual, like weather, grandma, don't be mad. But Mom's wedding was yesterday. The spoon stops, the steam keeps going, there's a sound I only hear inside my ribs. The hush when a hallway light burns out. Her wedding, I repeat, gently, because echoes sometimes behave better than new words. Where was it? He tries to shrug and lands on smirk instead. The defensive kind kids wear when they know a sentence has clause. The club, small ceremony. Pierce wanted simple. He adds air quotes, which is how children apologize without verbs. I place the spoon down like it might break if I blink too fast. My daughter, Mara, my straight A. Hard heel. New suit Mara got married without telling me. Left me in a kitchen with a lemon peel and a clock that minds its manners. Did she wear white, I ask, not because color matters, but because details can soften a fall. Ivory, Keaton says, then looks at the table as if it owes him an alibi. She said it was better, optics, and he swallows. I wasn't supposed to tell you. Joke when arrives in a sweater, then you're already doing poorly at not telling, I say softly. He almost laughs and then remembers his assignment: stay loyal, stay tall, stay out of the blast radius of feelings. I pour tea. We sit. The kettle, satisfied with its performance, quiets to a memory. I want to ask the hows and whys and who gave my daughter permission to excise me like a phone number from a contact list. Instead, I say, I was saving my dress cry for later, but I can adjust. Keaton looks up, eyes bright, because relief has always liked humor's porch light. Academic phrase of the day, impression management. The public argument that people curate themselves for audiences. Trimming and polishing so the story plays. I can almost see the edits on Mara's script, Motherless Isle. Club that smells like money and lemon oil. A groom named Pierce who pronounces the R like he grew it in a greenhouse. We nibble crackers because chewing buys time. I ask what he ate at the reception. He tells me about the canapes that tasted like ambition and a cake so polite it apologized for crumbs. He says Pierce's friends shook hands with compliments that sounded like audits. He tells me how Mara laughed, but only from the cheeks, not the ribs. I add a lemon slice to my cup and listen to my bones learn a new weather pattern. Quick, quirky sidebar. The word ivory used to mean elephant tusk white, but in textiles. It's the shade that flatters yellow bulbs, and ambition equally softer than white. More expensive than honesty, in old paint charts. Ivory often lived next to estate cream. I don't believe in omens, but I do believe in palettes that tell on people. Keaton fiddles with the salt shaker. She said the club has rules, he says, about guest lists, about optics. He doesn't know that I know what that word costs. I've paid rent with it. I've watched it break perfectly good things. Optics are for microscopes and eyeglasses, I say, not mothers. He nods, then tries to put the nod back, like a kid who touched a painting and hopes the guard blinked. Elder wisdom reflection. when someone tries to shrink your role in your own life. Don't argue with the invitation list. Go home in your heart and light every lamp. You are not a prop, you are the house. I wash my hands at the sink because water helps when anger dresses up as sadness. How is she, I ask. He hesitates. She's happy, he says too quickly, then adds, you know. Busy happy. Busy happy is a cousin of hungry. It eats a lot and never feels full. He tells me about Pierce's coat, blue so dark it felt like a midnight that charges you rent. He tells me about the speech Pierce gave, unspooling words like investment synergy, legacy, alignment. He tells me how Mara looked at him like people look at planes lifting off the runway, amazed, a little afraid, forgetting that gravity has its own calendar. He doesn't tell me what his own face did when someone introduced him as the stepson. He doesn't need to. I'm a mother. We see the edges before the room does. Joke 2 leans against the fridge. I bet their DJ had a playlist called Rich People Dancing. Keaton snorts, grateful for a sound that isn't a knot. I think of the last month Mara skipping Sunday dinners because there's a tasting. Her text clipped like coupons. The way she stopped borrowing my slow cooker because Pierce's chef says low heat abuses texture. I think of the day she told me she had a new role at work, client-facing. She whispered, like a prayer to an anxious God, and how she measured her sentences as if money were listening. I think of the years I braided her hair in the morning with hands still smelling of night shift and antiseptic. Of the afternoons we took our shoes off in the backyard and counted airplanes. I think of the travel-size bottle of perfume on my dresser she used on her way out to the club that would later keep me off its guest list. What did you say when they said my name, I ask. He lowers his eyes. They didn't, he says. He says it so softly the lemon slice leans in to hear. They said, family only, and kept moving, he adds, quickly, like a boy who still tries to build a ladder out of grammar. But I told Mom afterward that you'd look beautiful in any color, not just ivory. The sentence lands, sweet and crooked. We clean the crumbs off the table because control enjoys small victories. I braid my thoughts into a careful rope. Thank you for telling me, I say. It matters. He exhales. I didn't want you to find out on the internet, he says, and the modern tenderness of that nearly undoes me. We talk about school, about his part-time job at the hardware store, about a stray cat that's been auditioning for our porch. We do a small, defiant thing. We plan the menu for Sunday anyway. Meatloaf that doesn't apologize, I say. Mashed potatoes that don't believe in restraint. He says he'll bring the green beans, the kind that squeak when they remember gardens. When he leaves, I stand at the window and watch the street put on its night sweater. The neighbor's porch light stutters, then steadies. The stray cat, late for its audition, slips under the hedge. I tidy the kitchen the way a nurse tidies a room after a hard conversation, gentle corners, clean lines, nothing showy. Joke 3, small as a spoon. At least when I cry, I won't smudge ivory. The laugh arrives, polite and loyal. I pull out a shoebox of photos, the analog kind that demand you use your thumbs. Mara at 5, scowling at a braid too tight. Mara at 12, looking like she invented the color teal. Mara at 17, cap crooked, smile not. I set 3 on the table and let the present look at them until it remembers. Then I put them back. I am not building a shrine to a version that can't answer her phone. Before bed, I write a short list titled When Mara Calls, because hope, like yeast, needs a bowl to grow in. 1. Ask if she ate. 2. Ask how her heart is. 3. Ask where she sleeps. 4. No lecture. 5. No math about guest lists. 6. Keep a chair warm. 7. Keep a boundary warmer. I turn off the kitchen light. The clock keeps being kind to seconds. The house keeps the shape it learned long before optics and clubs had last names. I tell the dark that I will love my child without applying for an audience pass. The dark, having heard this vow from mothers since walls learned to listen, agrees. And somewhere, though I can't know it yet, the runway Mara thinks she lifted off from is already taxing her back toward me. But that is for another part of the story. Tonight, there is only a lemon peel, a loyal kettle, a grandson who traded a smirk for a soft truth, and a room that refuses to forget my name. A month is a long hallway when every door stays closed. Mine began with the sound of my kettle learning new corners to whistle into and ended with my porch light auditioning for patience. Sundays kept their shape because I refused to let the calendar forget its manners. Meatloaf that didn't apologize, potatoes that forgave, green beans that squeaked like they got good news. Keaton came when he could between shifts at the hardware store, slipping into the chair he's been stretching out of since he was 12. We talked about wrenches and weather and the stray cat that pretended this house was a recommendation. Neighbors did what neighbors do. Mrs. Alvarez from across the street brought over a lemon cake and said, "I've been refreshing Facebook for a dress photo." And I smiled in a way that tasted like chamomile. "Ivory," I said, as if color could stand in for invitation. Mr. Rudd from the corner went, "Any pictures yet?" the way men ask for scores. And I said, they opted for privacy. The sentence walked off the porch with its coat too light for the wind. Academic phrase of the day. Cognitive dissonance. The public argument that when our beliefs and our facts fight, we pad one or the other until the room quiets. I kept smoothing the cushions on the belief that my daughter would never seat the word mother outside a banquet hall. The facts asked for a chair of their own. I set it out and laid a napkin. On Tuesdays, I took the bus to the market because it's good for a heart to be in a public with other hearts. The bus driver wore his cap with civic dignity and told everyone to hold on to something true. I held the pole, in the memory of braiding Mara's hair before third grade picture day, my night shift hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic and peppermint gum. At the market, I chose tomatoes that made the correct sound when you poke them. And the woman in the spice aisle asked if I preferred cumin or a clean substitute. I told her, cumin doesn't need a stunt double. It needs a skillet and a friend. Quick, quirky sidebar basil and mint look like cousins at the nursery, but plant them side by side and mint will annex the neighborhood. It creeps underground, throws parties in your geraniums, and wakes up with someone else's mail. The trick is a pot mint thrives when margins hold. I thought about that every time a sentence tried to annex my day. Pots are not punitive. They are kindness with edges. Elder wisdom reflection. When silence grows, don't prune it with accusations. Water the parts of your life that answer back sleep. Soup. Sweeping so the room doesn't echo only one name. Fidelity to your ordinary can be the bravest vow. People asked for photos the way wind asks for chimes. I kept the chimes in a drawer. I didn't lie. But I did speak in present tense. Mara's working a lot. We're adjusting. The cake was polite. Ivory is forgiving under yellow bulbs. The words behaved like gauze transparent enough to see through, structured enough to stop a gush. Keaton's smirk. His armor softened into something else. He'd bring me a hardware store discount plant that looked hopeful in the window and ask if I needed help with the gutter. I'm strong enough for leaves, I'd say. You handle the ladders. Jokewan learned to wear soft shoes. Nights arrived with a different temperature, as if the street were practicing moonlight in a lower key. I'd sit at the table with my shoebox of photos like a librarian doing inventory of a private collection. I didn't line them up altar style. I let them rest face down and pulled one at random. Mara at 8. Scowling at a crooked ribbon. Mara at 16. an elbow of defiance, and a grin she stole from me. After each one, I tuck it back. The way you return a book to its shelf when you trust you'll know how to find it again. In the mail came 2 envelopes that told on a life I hadn't been introduced to, a glossy catalog from the club where optics wear cufflinks, and a fundraiser invitation with Mara and Pierce, printed in a font that looked expensive and slightly embarrassed. They addressed me as family and guest. That ampersand was a ladder I chose not to climb. I placed both into the polite trash. I saw Mara 3 times that month, but always through glass, on the supermarket's grand openings board, in a photo clipped from some lifestyle page, in a friend's feed, blurred at the edge of an event, and once through the tinted window of a car that glided past my bus stop. Her profile angled like a museum label. She did not see me. I didn't wave. There are moments when love is not a flare gun, but a thermos warmth saved for when it can be received. Joke 2 visited during laundry. I told the dryer I'd invited to the club when it learned to whisper. The dryer, unbothered, kept doing its windy sermon. I made a list titled What I Can Control, and another titled What Is Not My Assignment. The first list was wonderfully domestic soups: socks, sleep, pruning the mint, learning to like my new watch that ticks without swagger. The second list was mostly 3 words: Mara's narrative arc. Lists cannot cure grief, but they can place chairs where grief won't stumble in the dark. On a Thursday, the church pantry called for volunteers. I put on my soft shoes and went. We stocked shelves with unglamorous abundance beans, rice, pasta that never pretends, cereal that crunches like competence. A woman my age asked if I had family nearby. Yes, I said, and no. She nodded in the way people nod when their house learned the same sentence last year. She told me her son hadn't called since Florida taught him new nouns. We stacked soup until the metal sang. The next Sunday, Keaton came late, out of breath, with a bruise blooming like slow thunder under his eye. My heart did what it's paid to do. It sprinted. "I'm okay," he said too quickly. "Work accident, box corner. You know." I did not know. I poured him water like a ceremony and let silence tell on him. He crumbled, not into tears, those come later, quieter, but into the posture of someone who lost the script. "He doesn't like me," he said, meaning Pierce. "He says I'm not brand congruent. He says Mom and I are optics risk together." I sat him at the table where this house does triage for spirits. "Do you have a place to sleep that isn't a metaphor?" I asked. He nodded, then shook his head, and then told me about a couch that wasn't sleep so much as a long blink, and a door that stuck because the building was older than courtesy. "Come here," I said. "We don't do branding, we do blankets." Joke 3 had a tiny, kind smirk. I put a second pillowcase on his pillow, because that's how you double your chances at rest. He showered the day out of his hair and ate 2 bowls of potatoes, the kind that make a person's edges less sharp. He told me the club caters sentences, that Pierce has a friend who advises optics, that Mara is practicing a laugh that doesn't crinkle her eyes. And then he slept on the couch, because the guest room was made for future grandchildren, and tonight this boy needed to practice not being brave. After he drifted, I stood by the sink and watched the street turn into ink. I made a new list: when she falls, not because I wanted to fall, but because gravity is part of love's ecosystem, and planning is one of my dialects. The list was short light on, kettle filled, spare toothbrush unopened. No, I told you, only, "Are you hurt?" I pressed my palm to the cool window and thought of how sometimes you can't see the tide changing until you notice where the sand dried differently. The invitations, the ampersand, the bruise, the couch that wasn't a bed dry, sand where water used to be. The runway that looked endless from the wedding window was, perhaps, a cul-de-sac with good lighting. I lay down in a room that has held my sleep through storms with names and years that refused them. The fan wrote its soft cursive. The watch kept time without swagger. The cat under the hedge auditioned for midnight. My last thought wasn't noble. It was practical. Tomorrow I'll make soup that doesn't care about optics, and I'll keep a chair warm, and a boundary warmer, and 2 towels folded the way my mother taught me when we used to count airplanes, and she used to say, "Every landing is a kind of arriving." It would be another 48 hours before my doorbell rang at an hour that disrespected clocks. And my daughter stood there wrecked, and Keaton stood behind her with his posture blown in half. But tonight, in the month of echoes, I let the house sing the old song of welcome that doesn't audition, of fences that are porches, of love that refuses to apply for a pass. The doorbell rings at a time that doesn't believe in manners. 3 short presses, then a palm on the wood the way people knock when words are out of breath. I'm already moving kettle off, light on, heart doing its nurse trot when I open to Mara, makeup sluiced sideways, hair like a paragraph mid-edit. Keaton stands behind her with a duffel and eyes that forgot their age. "Mom," she says. But to me it lands like mother, the old syllables with their winter coats on. She tries to muster a smile, fails, and leans against the frame as if houses can take temperatures. "Shoes off," I say, "because rules are blankets. Come in." The hallway inhales them. Mara smells like airport soap and panic. Keaton smells like rain that didn't ask permission. I steer them to the kitchen that knows how to hold trembling. The clock behaves itself. The tea remembers how. "Pierce is gone," she says. And the word gone opens a trapdoor where sentences fall. The accounts, too. The lease was never in my name. It was a corporate courtesy. He said we were leveraging liquidity until the fundraiser clears. He said a lot of things that were nouns pretending to be ladders. She presses both hands to her temples. "I can't find my ring." She laughs once. The sound of broken utensil. "I can't find the bed," she corrects. Keaton sets down the duffel like it might detonate. "He threw us out after a fight about branding risks," he says. The bruise on his cheek now a month old and angrier for it. Then his friend drove up in a car that sounds like an investment and used the club's loading dock like it's their private exit. We tried to follow, but security selected us for leaving. The verb selection has never sounded so lonely. Academic phrase of the day, predatory glamour. The public argument that when wealth dresses harm in satin words and polished rooms. People mistake shimmer for safety and forget to ask for receipts. I put mugs in hands. Tea is a noun that keeps its promises. "Sit," I say. "We will triage, not dramatize." Keaton sits. Mara floats, then remembers gravity, and sits too. The chairs take their weight like professionals. She tells it in pieces because truth respects oxygen. Pierce had her sign a stack of forms for convenience, none of which were convenient. The corporate courtesy apartment belonged to a company he advised, which evaporated 2 hours after their fight. The joint card was joint the way a museum pass is for members and guests, charming, until the guard checks the list. Her paycheck had been rerouted to a growth account that grew legs. She repeats words like legacy and alignment with a bitter courtesy that makes even the kettle blush. Elder wisdom reflection. When someone starts swapping your verbs for buzzwords, check your pockets and your pulse. Life is not a pitch deck. Ask what the word does, not how it shines. I set bread on a plate because carbohydrates keep the room from floating off. "Where did you sleep?" I ask. "The car," Keaton says, answering for them both. Shame trying to hide his face and getting fired by my stare. Parking structure P2. Security did lapse. We hid under a blanket like we were 12. Mara's knuckle finds the table and taps a rhythm only she hears. I called Pierce's assistant, she says. The voicemail smiled. She wipes her face with a paper towel that wasn't hired for this kind of work. I called the club, the recording said. We regret. Quick, quirky sidebar. The word regret comes from Old French regrater, to bewail. Clubs and corporations prefer the noun because it sounds elegant, like a silk scarf thrown over a stain. The verb is less pretty. You cry, you fix, you wash the shirt. Keaton's voice goes quiet. He told Mom I'm bad optics in every room. He told me to exit the frame. He looks at his hands as if they could translate him back into a person. Grandma, I can't keep exiting. I slide a glass of water his way. No one exits this kitchen, I say. Joke one puts on slippers and sits in the corner. Mara shakes, small as a bird. I'm so embarrassed, she whispers. I made you small to look big for strangers. The sentence eats its own tail and then lets go. He promised an invitation-only life. Instead, I got exclusions I never agreed to, including you. She cries like a faucet that only knows on and off. And tonight, it chooses on. I give her a towel, the kind with a thicker band on one end because details matter when your day has been boiled. Look at me, I say, gentle as a parking brake. You are here. Not at the club, not in P2. Here is a noun. We can work with nouns. We triage. First, I say, food, sleep, shower, phone chargers. Logistics is a lullaby if you sing it soft. Second, tomorrow morning we call the bank and your HR. We freeze what can be frozen and thaw what shouldn't have been touched. Third, we get documentation screenshots, statements, every email with courtesy in quotation marks. Fourth, we find you a chair that isn't velvet and a job that pays with money, not access. Keaton nods like a metronome finding a song. I can work extra shifts, he says. And I have a friend who's subletting a room for cheap. We can check it out after we sleep. I file his offer under Rescue Tendencies Monitor for Burnout. Mara sniffs. I can pick up temp admin work. I used to be fluent in calendars before I started dating them. The joke lands with a limp, but nobody minds. Joke 2 pats it on the head. I grab the spare toothbrushes from the drawer labeled company and the big. Forgiving towels. Shower away the nouns. I say, put on sweatpants. I'll make soup that can forgive almost anything. She tries to apologize again. I veto with a look. Later, I say, we'll inventory blame when your blood sugar isn't auditioning for tragedy. While the shower writes steam on the mirror, I text 2 people B from the clinic. Need a triage consult on Tuesday for legal aid referrals and Jonah Reed. The investigator I call when storms wear suits, do a soft skim on Pierce, public filings, aliases. Advisory shells. No heat yet. He replies with a thumbs up that can subpoena if needed. I set my phone face down so it doesn't throw its little flashlight onto our fatigue. Soup happens the old way, onions surrendering. Carrots telling the room to be kind. Broth practicing a sermon on repair. Keaton hovers, chopping with the humility of a boy who wants to help but knows knives are honest. I can run to the hardware store tomorrow, he says. They like me on mornings. I'm good at the key machine. Keys are nouns too, I say. He smiles. Just one tooth. Mara returns, wrapped in cotton and embarrassment. I hand her a bowl and a chair. She eats the way a person applies pressure to a wound. We were never married in the county, she says after a few bites, stunned by her own sentence. He insisted on a private celebrant bespoke. He said paperwork to follow. I Googled the officiant. It's a content creator. She laughs. 2 notes shy of despair. I don't think anything counts but the photos. She looks at her left hand as if it used to have a line to the future and the line was cut. I breathe out slowly because air is cheaper than litigation. Then we will not spend Friday learning Latin for annulment, I say. We will spend Friday learning how to be fed and housed by ourselves. She nods, grateful in the tiny, fierce way. I can do that, she says. I can do small. Small is where competence lives, I say. Competence doesn't need a club. We write a short list together, 3 columns today. Tomorrow. Not today. Today shower, soup, sleep, charge phones, text one friend who actually answers. Tomorrow bank. HR, Keaton sublet viewing, temp agency registration, collect mail from the box the club pretended we didn't need. Not today, apologies to the neighborhood, forensic accounting of charm, interrogating the word ivory. Quick, quirky sidebar, early wedding rings were often made of iron to show strength, then gold to show wealth, then diamonds to show marketing. None of them show kindness unless the wearer does. Your finger isn't a resume, it's a pulse. We make the couch into a bed the way a theater resets a stage. Keaton takes the futon with a grunt that sounds like gratitude. I put fresh pillowcases on both pillows because doubling is ritual. I place a glass of water on the nightstand and a trash can within reach because crying sometimes makes the body vote. Joke 3 is just a whisper. House rule, no shame about my home. The thermostat likes company. Mara nods, tired enough to accept grace without auditing it. Before lights out. She stands in the kitchen doorway and examines the photos in the hall, her gap-toothed smile. Her graduation cap crooked, my mother's apron on Thanksgiving. She touches the frame of the one where she is 7 and furious about tights. I want it to be new, she says. He said I could only be new if I abandoned all the old. She looks at me with the face I met in a delivery room that smelled like lemon and linen decades ago. I forgot that old can mean true. Old can mean tested, I say. It can mean the bridge that didn't fall when the parade went over it. I tuck a blanket around her shoulders like I'm picking up where a certain club left off. Sleep now. We'll be practical in the morning. The house agrees. The fan writes its lullaby cursive. The watch keeps steady time without swagger. The stray cat under the hedge decides tonight is quiet enough to patter up the steps and curl into a puddle of trust on the mat. I turn the porch light on small lighthouse. Big job. In bed. I write 4 lines. Predatory glamour uses mirrors. We'll use receipts. Nouns first. Verbs next. Adjectives never. Soup forgives. When morning asks for courage, we'll hand it coffee and a list. I close my notebook. Somewhere in this city, a man in a midnight coat is practicing sentences that sparkle and do not feed. Here, in this house. The sparkle is off and the feeding is on. The hallway holds 2 sleeping people and a mother who has decided to be large again, on purpose. And that is the only optics we honor. Morning shows up with a clipboard and a kind face. I put on coffee that smells like competence and set 3 bowls at the table as if logistics were breakfast. Mara comes in wearing my oldest sweatshirt like a witness protection plan for a heart. Keaton's hair is a polite mess. I slide toast toward hands and a pen toward the middle. We're going to do this like a small clinic, I say. Vitals first, plan second. Discharge with instructions. They both nod. Sometimes being treated like patients is the first kindness after a long night. We start with the vitals, sleep some. Food yes, cash thin, phones charged, shame elevated. Not yet dangerous. Good, I say. And the kettle agrees by remembering its song. Academic phrase of the day. Commitment device. The public argument that you set up rules and consequences in calm hours so your future shake yourself has something firm to lean on. Today we build ours while the coffee is still warm. I pull out a yellow pad and write 3 headings in block letters. Work, honesty, no shame about my home. These are the conditions for staying. I tell them. Voice low and steady like a porch light. Work, everyone has a job. Paid or building toward pay. Honesty, no optics. No posing. Say the nouns even when they're heavy. No shame about my home. Eat at this table with your full appetite. Do not apologize for my sofa, my soup, or my neighborhood. I will not house embarrassment. Mara takes a breath that sounds like a decision learning to walk. Yes, she says. I can make calls today, temp agencies, the clinic's admin pool, anyone who pays with actual dollars. Keaton taps the pen. I can pick up mornings at the hardware store and an evening shift at Frank's Pizza if they'll have me. Elder wisdom reflection. Love can be unconditional. Housing isn't. Put standards on the door so the welcome inside can be soft. Blankets work best when the roof remembers it is a roof. We fit the practical around the vow. I call the bank, explain the growth account that grew legs, and the woman on the line is all business in the good way. She freezes the reroute, resets direct deposit to Mara's name, and opens a fraud case with more nouns than apologies. We call Mara's HR. They confirm no benefits can be rerouted without her consent, which is corporate for the barn doors closing now, dear. I text B at the clinic. She replies with 3 openings for Tuesday admin float. Intake desk. Chart scanning humble, honest, hours. Quick, quirky sidebar onions make you cry because when you cut them, you unleash enzymes that convert to a sulfur compound called synpropanethyl S-oxide. It floats up, meets your eyes, and asks for tears like a bad movie. Chill the onion and use a sharp knife, less gas. Fewer regrets also works, I find. For conversations, cool the room. Use sharp nouns. Between calls. We do housework with intent. Keaton strips the couch and remakes it with corners that would pass inspection. Mara fills the dishwasher like a person learning penance in porcelain. I fold towels with the wide band on the outside, small dignity, lasting effect. Joke one pads in wearing socks if we keep behaving. The laundry basket might nominate us for office. Keaton snorts. Mara almost does. The almost counts. At 10, Jonah texts public filings show Pierce attached to 3 LLCs dissolved last week. 1 advisory firm registered to a P.O. box, civil small claims trail. Unpaid vendor suits. Pattern of corporate courtesies. Nothing criminal in open records yet. Proceed with caution. Collect documents. I reply, copy. We're on the noun diet. He sends a thumbs up that looks procedural. We draft a small budget on the back of an envelope, rent later. Token. To form a habit. Groceries shared. Transit passes non-negotiable. Savings jar, something with a spine. Keaton suggests a chores grid. I bless him and draw columns: bath, floors, dishes, trash, porch. We rotate. I write soup under Thursday and underline it because ritual is a currency. At noon, we walk to the bus. I hand Mara a transit card, the blue kind that asks nothing but a tap. She flinches. Some memories don't like public seating, and then breathes. I used to think buses meant failure, she says. Today, they look like mercy with schedules. The driver tips his cap. Hold on to something true, he says, same as last week. But today, the sentence finds a chair. We stop at Frank's Pizza. Keaton asks for evening hours with the humble posture of a person who uses his own name as a reference. Frank looks him up and down, shrugs like a practical saint, and says, apron at 5. We stop at 2 temp agencies. Mara fills forms, prints a resume with fewer adjectives and more verbs, and schedules a typing test. We stop at the post office to file a hold on any forward from Mara and Pierce to anywhere but here. The clerk stamps something with ceremony. Stamps are tiny gavels. They make rooms behave. Joke 2 wanders by the bulletin board. Knitting circle meets Wednesday. Skills welcome. Attitudes optional. I tell Mara it's a good slogan for a life. Skills welcome. Attitudes optional, she repeats, writing it on the corner of her palm where expensive vows used to sit. Back home, We put lunch between us, sandwiches that understand their assignment and apples that squeak approval. I take out my pad again. Honesty check, I say. Is there anything else I should know? Keaton tugs his sleeves. I took a little cash from your coffee jar last month, he admits. Cheeks the color of truth. $10. I left a note in my head. That's not legal tender. He slides a 10 across the table. I tap it back. Consider it 2 hours of gutter work, I say. You and that ladder have a date. He grins in relief, which is a better currency. Mara traces the rim of her glass. Pierce made me block you, she says softly. He called you brand dampening. I told myself it was temporary, like Spanx for my life. I was wrong. She looks up, eyes not asking for acquittal, only for a sentence that ends somewhere decent. I am sorry. I hear you, I say. You will show me. She nods the nod of a woman reading a prescription she intends to fill. We write one more page boundaries. No Pierce in this house, I say. No friends of Pierce in this house. No talk of clubs like they're planets we orbit. You will not compare my towels to a hotel's. You will not apologize for using them. Mara signs her initials next to each rule. Keaton adds flourish. Boys do that when they mean it. Afternoon slides in politely. Mara calls the clinic and schedules an interview block. B texts me a thumbs up emoji and the word sandwiches, which is HR for we will feed her while we assess. I print a simple weekly plan and stick it to the fridge with the magnet shaped like a peer morning's job hunt or shift. Afternoons chores and errands, evenings rest. Reading or helping at the pantry. We pencil in one church pantry shift. Calories given away have a way of returning as courage. Quick, quirky sidebar. Dryer lint is wildly flammable. NASA once tested it as emergency tinder for field kits. Clean your trap. Peace loves a tidy exit. Keaton volunteers lint duty with the solemnity of a knighthood. I dub him Sir Filter. Toward 5. Keaton heads to Frank's to meet an apron. Mara and I walk to the clinic for her typing test, 90 words per minute, which is what happens when you spend years writing apologies you shouldn't have had to write. The administrator smiles. Your accuracy is excellent. We have chart scanning tomorrow at 9. Mara blinks like the sun came closer by 1 responsible inch. Thank you, she says, and means it at market value. We stop by the corner store for milk and the polite bread that toasts like it believes in mornings. At the register, the clerk asks if we want a donation jar for Keaton's team Small Town Reflex. Mara reaches for her wallet. I touch her hand. We'll give later, I whisper. Today we take the jar labeled Chance. Back home, I lay out towels and tell Mara where the extra blankets live. Pick a chore to own, I say. Floors, she answers. Surprising us both. I want things under my feet to be trustworthy. I hand her the broom like a diploma. Joke 3 nods from the corner sweep like you mean it. Forgiveness gathers in dustpans. When Keaton returns, smelling of oregano and effort, we eat late noodles that don't posture. Sauce that keeps its promises. Salad that squeaks again because vegetables like continuity. We go over tomorrow's list once more, then I put the yellow pad away. Lists are tools. They shouldn't be centerpieces. Before bed, Mara lingers at the doorway of the hall where the photos live. I'll earn my way back into those frames, she says. You can't earn that, I reply. You can only stop walking away from it. She nods. Then I'll practice not walking away. I turn off the lights. The fan writes its calm cursive overhead. The watch keeps time without swagger. Somewhere. At a club that smells like lemon oil and debt. Someone is practicing optics in a mirror, here, in this house. We are practicing stewardship with brooms, shifts, and soup. Our commitment device is taped to the fridge and stitched into our habits. It is not glamorous, it is good. And goodness, I've learned, is a door that opens the same way every time key. Turn. Welcome. Rules. We're inside now. We'll keep it that way, by morning. Shame has taken off its tuxedo and put on sweatpants. It sits at my table with bed hair and asks for coffee. I pour it one black and keep my cup for myself. Mara's at the sink rinsing bowls with more focus than anyone needs for ceramic. Keaton's tying his work shoes like he's persuading them to be brave. Our commitment device, the page that says work, honesty. No shame about my home glows from the fridge like a lighthouse sticker. Mara's phone buzzes. She glances, winces. Group text, she says. The club girls. They want brunch at the atrium. Catching up. She air quotes the way a person lifts something they're done lifting. You can say no, I remind her. She nods. I will, she says. But the sentence has to fight a muscle memory. She types another time. New schedule. Hope you're well. Her thumb hovers, then taps send. There's a quiet victory in the air, like a zipper finally agreeing with you. We start with lists, because lists are therapy that stacks. HR at the clinic slotted her for chart scanning at 9, and the temp agency penciled a phone bank on Thursday if the typing test turns into a chair. Keaton's doing mornings at the hardware and evenings at Frank's. He's turned into a boy whose forearms smell like lumber and oregano, which is one of the better adolescent perfumes. Academic phrase of the day. Symbolic capital. The public argument that certain objects, places, and people carry status you can flash like a badge. Clubs, brands, ivory gowns, even a brunch atrium currencies that buy posture in certain rooms. We're trading ours for usefulness bus passes, punch clocks, receipts with nouns that match. Keaton heads out, apron in his backpack and an extra granola bar in case Courage needs a snack. I walk Mara to the clinic. On the bus, she watches a toddler refuse a hat and says, I remember you bribing me with orange slices. I grin. You were a formidable negotiator. She smiles, small and honest. I wanted to be fancy so bad, she says, almost to the window. Turns out fancy is mostly a chore chart with a publicist. Joke one waves from the back of the bus and then minds its manners. At the clinic, B shows Mara the scanner feed. Click. Verify. Name spelled right, and the corner where staff stash granola and gratitude. Accuracy is kindness in here, B says. And you can watch the words land. Mara's shoulders loosen a fraction. I leave her in a room that hums like competence and head to the pantry where shelves of beans do not care about pedigree. At noon, Keaton swings by between jobs and walks me home. He kicks a stone down the sidewalk like a boy on parole from worry. I have to tell you something, he says, eyes on the stone. I laughed once. At a joke someone made about your house, how small it is. They said it was adorable, like doll furniture, and I snorted. I didn't correct them. The stone caroms against the curb. He finally looks up. I'm sorry. Elder wisdom reflection. Shame shrinks in the open air. Name it in daylight, and it loses the costume. Name it at a table with soup, and it loses the script. Forgiveness isn't a magic trick. It's a job you clock into, and the first task is inventory. I put a hand on his shoulder. You were trying to belong, I say. Belonging that requires you to betray your porch isn't belonging. It's membership dues you can't afford. He nods. I won't pay that again, he says. Good, I answer. We have rent now. Save your cash for that. Joke 2 slips a wink at the idea of membership dues and then sits down. Back home, I set out 3 ingredients that have never lied to me: onions, tomatoes, lentils, and leave a note for Mara that says, pot on low. Add water when it asks. I tape our new chore grid beside the magnet shaped like a pear and give myself porch. Because porches are where apologies show up wearing other clothes. Afternoon brings weather in the shape of a knock. It's Renee, one of the club girls standing on my steps with sunglasses that think they're human. She peeks past me as if my living room were a museum she's read reviews of. "Is Mara here?" she asks, voice pitched to auditorium. "Not yet," I say. "Can I help Renee shifts?" Inhales a preparation. "We missed her at brunch," she offers. "We were worried," she adds, testing the word for sincerity. I could say many things. I choose one with teeth and tea. "We're good," I say, and hold her with calm. "Mara's working. Real chairs, real pay. If you want to drop off a casserole. We like noodles." Renee blinks as if casseroles were a rumor. "Aye, sure," she says, retreating down the steps, heels negotiating with my plain concrete. At the sidewalk, she turns. "We didn't know," she says. "You didn't look," I answer. Not unkindly. She nods, chastened by a sentence. Quick, quirky sidebar sunglasses don't actually make you look cooler. They trick your brain into thinking you're less scrutinized by reducing visible micro-reactions. That's why poker players love them and apologies hate them. Eyes are the report card of sincerity. Mara returns around 4 with ink on her fingers and relief on her mouth. "I scanned 600 charts and spelled 1,000 names right," she says. And the pride in her voice feels like muscle memory. Also, I made $9 an hour, which is both insulting and saving my life. We high-five like junior varsity champions and stir the lentils with ceremony. "As we cook," she says, "I owe you the nouns." She names them the first time she skipped Sunday dinner because Pierce said optics. The time she laughed at a joke about my neighborhood because not laughing would have cost her a chair. The day she blocked my number because he called me brand dampening and she wanted to be light. She says it all without flinching. And something unknots in the room like a ribbon relieved of duty. "I was cruel," she concludes. "On purpose. Sometimes. And on layaway others." She looks at the pot as if soup might grate her. "I am sorry." I taste the broth. "It needs salt, not penance. You will show me." I repeat. "The prescription we agreed on." "Yes," she says. "Floors are mine, and charts. And the sentence, 'I am Mara. This is my mother. We live here. We are not ashamed.'" We set the table. Keaton arrives with an oregano halo and collapses into his chair like a success that hasn't made a fuss. "Frank told me I have good hands," he says. He meant dough, I think. But I'm taking it for life. He washes up and joins us. We bow our heads, not because a rule says to, but because gratitude asks for an address and we eat. The lentils forgive what they can. Carbs do their humble liturgy. After dinner, we take the apology outside like laundry. You air it where the breeze can make work of it. Mara knocks on Mrs. Alvarez's door with a Tupperware of lentils and a sentence she's practiced. "I'm sorry I pretended we were too busy for your lemon cake," she says. "We were just too proud." Mrs. Alvarez hugs her in that unbeatable grandmother way. "The cake didn't hold it against you," she says. "I won't. Either." They laugh, the sound of integrity finding its humor. On our way back, Mr. Rudd raises an eyebrow from his porch swing. Any pictures yet, he teases. The old script testing, the new edit. Mara walks up to his steps like a person who pays in truth. "No pictures," she says, smiling. "But the soup looked great." He nods, satisfied. The neighborhood updates its files. We end the night with a little ceremony I invent on the spot. I fetch the shoebox of photos and hand each of them one Mara at 5 in a lopsided ribbon. Keaton at 10 with blue frosting in his hair. "These don't require an invitation," I say. "They live here." Mara presses hers to her chest. "I thought I had to audition for my own life," she says. "I'm done performing." Keaton holds up his picture. I was a mess. He grins. Still am, but with better shoes. Joke 3 straightens its tie. Our brand going forward, I declare, is sturdy. Color soup and bus pass, mascot broom. They laugh because it's ridiculous and because it's perfect. Before bed, Mara tapes our rules under the pear magnet and adds a line in tidy print, 1 public kindness daily. It could be small, return a cart, carry a bag, greet a neighbor by name. I add one beneath it. 1 private honesty nightly. It could be tiny. I wanted to brag today and didn't. I wanted to hide today and didn't. We initial both like adults who learned something the expensively dressed way. I sit at my notebook and write what the day asked me to remember. Shame is smaller when it eats at your table. Symbolic capital can't buy sleep. Bus passes can. Accuracy is kindness. Floors are vows. Lights out. The fan writes its cursive across the ceiling, a pen that never runs dry. The watch ticks without swagger. The house. Pleased with our choices. Does that contented wooden-side old homes do when the temperature finally matches their memory? Somewhere in some atrium, a brunch photo is being edited to look like joy. Here in our kitchen. Nobody is editing. We are full and tired and honest. It is not fancy, it is wealth. The day teaches with a soft voice. We start at the kitchen table with a paper bag of groceries and a pen that clicks like a metronome. This is grocery math, I tell Mara and Keaton. Not the kind they sell in glossy jars. We unpack purpose oats, beans, greens, eggs, onions, carrots. I draw 3 columns, cost, meals, days. We plug numbers in like pegs that hold a tent. 2 dozen eggs equals 6 breakfasts and 2 dinners if breakfast gets jealous, I say. Keaton grins and writes EGG night in the margin. Academic phrase of the day, satisficing the public argument that good enough beats perfect when perfect is expensive, exhausting, or imaginary. We aim for sturdy cooks on time. We practice the bus like a language lesson. Route 7 to the clinic, transfer to 13 for the pantry. 22 is your friend when the hardware store locks up late. Hold on to something true, the driver says again, and I want to embroider it on the bus seats. Mara maps it on her phone and also on a scrap of paper because batteries have opinions. I'm getting good at transfers, she murmurs, pleased at the puzzle coming into focus. You always were, I say. You just used to call them networking. At the clinic, Mara learns surgeries built from paper charts, doctor's notes, signatures that look like old vines. She catches errors kindly and returns files with the hush of a librarian. I like being useful, she tells me at lunch. And it lands like somebody set a gentle book down. Keaton, between shifts, pops in with a pair of work gloves and a dough smudge on his wrist like an honest bracelet. He shows me a photo of a perfect pizza crust. Frank says I'm consistent, he reports. Consistency is how ovens fall in love, I tell him. Joke one leans on the counter and remembers not to elbow. We do small. Bright errands that don't need a bow, thrift store mugs that fit human hands. A drying rack for days when the air wants to help. A $3 lamp that will rescue the guest room from lonely corners. At the register, Mara stands automatically to one side so an imaginary camera can find her best angles, then notices herself and laughs. Old choreography, she says. New music. Elder wisdom reflection. Dignity folds best when you treat it like laundry regular. Gentle cycle. No harsh chemicals. Hang to dry in ordinary air. It's never the fabric that fails. It's the handling. We cook in shifts that feel like choir practice. Keaton learns the quiet art of soaking beans. Mara dices onions chilled from the fridge so they sigh instead of fight. I teach them to walk the fridge, sweep your eyes from top shelf to crisper like a security guard counting nightlights. You prevent small extinctions. I hand Mara a notebook labeled Meals We Actually Eat, and she writes Soup Thursdays. EGG night. Friday leftovers with flair. Flair, she smiles, a squeeze of lemon, and an apology to last week, I say. Joke 2 keeps its shoes by the door. Quick, quirky sidebar, a bay leaf. That plain green rectangle you ignore. Contains an oil that helps certain proteins loosen their social anxiety in broth. Throw one into beans or stew, and you don't taste bay so much as you taste everybody else showing up better. Some days a house needs a bay leaf. Some months a family does. We practice phone calls without flinching. Mara rings the temp agency and asks for a morning block, clear and courteous. She calls the bank to confirm the reroute is dead and the unhelpful growth account is in autopsy. She returns Renee's earlier doorstep with a text that is both soft and steel. Thanks for checking. Working now. Catch up another day. Bring a casserole if you like noodles. No emojis. The sentence doesn't audition. I take Keaton to the laundromat next to Frank's because honest rooms like neighbors. He shakes dryer lint into the trash like a knighthood. Sir Filter, I remind him. He bows to the lint trap because sometimes dignity is comedy with chores. He tells me how a regular at Frank's orders whatever the kid with good hands recommends and how that sentence patched more than a shift. He says he sleeps like a person who is tired on purpose. I touch his shoulder as if blessing a thermostat. On the walk home, Mara notices the lemon tree in Mrs. Alvarez's yard and asks if we might catch one for Flair. For Friday, leftovers with Flair, she clarifies. We catch Mrs. Alvarez on her porch and exchange fruit for a promise of soup. Community is an economy that rarely needs cash. In the afternoon, I show Mara and Keaton how to read a paycheck stub like a map grows. Net, withholding. The little cryptic codes that say where your hours went to learn algebra. We open a second savings jar and label it first month's rent. First electric bill. First, we can do this without calling anyone. We put $6 in and sit up straighter. Around 3. The mail flutters in with its mixed motives. There's a flyer from the club for a Legacy Gala ivory font on estate cream. I put it straight in the polite trash and save the envelope for lists. There's also a plain letter addressed only to Mara, last name, no end. Her hands hesitate. She opens it. From the celebrant, she says flatly. The letter thanks her for choosing a content-forward ceremony experience and confirms no legal filing occurred. Couples may file with the county at their convenience. She exhales. It sounds like a blame leaving the building. I didn't sign my life away, she whispers. I only signed my pride. We pour tea for the ghost and let it leave. At 4:30. We walk to the church pantry to volunteer the way you give thanks when you can't afford fireworks. We stock rice and laugh at the cereal mascots. A woman arrives with eyes that match last week's weather. First time here, she says, voice small and polite. Mara moves like a person who's been given permission to be useful. Welcome, she says. Do you like lentils? We have 2 kinds. They talk about recipes that don't require applause. Something unglamorous and permanent knits itself between them, fellow citizens of the ordinary. On the way back, Miss Chang from the bakery hands us a bag of yesterday's bread and says, "For your Thursday soup, I like your photos in the hall." She's never been inside. She must have glimpsed them through the open door on a good breeze day. I feel seen in a way that doesn't require a caption. Evening is small and humane. Keaton arrives with oregano and a story a man at Frank's tried to tip him in exposure. Keaton said, "We take actual money." And Frank clapped once from the oven. We eat bean stew with the personality of a good porch. We list 3 wins each, Mara says. I said no to an atrium brunch and yes to bus transfers. Keaton says, I am consistent, also tipped in money. I say, our dignity dried on the line without shrinking. We clean up with the radio set to songs that remember bridges. After dishes, the house requests quiet. I teach Keaton how to mend a seam. He jokes that mending is on brand, then groans at his own pun and keeps stitching. Mara sweeps the floors like she promised for trust underfoot, and the room takes the compliment. I make a pot of tea that tastes like bedtime and debt reduction. Before sleep, I catch Mara at the hall photos again. She's not performing, she's studying. I was so sure optics were everything, she says softly. Turns out optics vanish in the dark, habits don't. She looks at me with a face that has stopped asking rooms for permission. Thank you for letting consequences do their work without adding punishments. Natural light is enough, I say, and she smiles because she used to pay handsomely for skylights. Joke 3 salutes the night tomorrow's egg night, I declare, and the only yoke on us will be breakfast. Keaton groans again. Appropriately, the house forgives the pun. I write my last 3 lines with the fan doing its cursive and the watch keeping humility on schedule. Satisficing tastes like dinner on time. Bay leaves are shy heroes, so are bus routes. Dignity folds, pride crumples. We're choosing the folding. Lights out, the street inhales, somewhere. A gala rehearses its speeches, here. A kitchen breathes evenly. A savings jar holds $6 plus 3 promises, and a broom leans like a trusted cane. We are learning the unfancy way. It is gentle, repeatable, ours. Tuesday opens like a clean envelope light at the edges. Promise in the fold. Mara leaves early for chart scanning with a thermos that knows its job. Keaton pedals to the hardware store with a bungee cord philosophy secure, flexible, slightly amused. I sweep the porch, the broom singing its bristle hymn, when the mail lands with a sound that believes in itself too much. On top, a thick cream envelope addressed to Mara, last name, CO, my address. The return address is from a law firm. The envelope is embossed, raised letters you can feel with your fingers, formal, in that overeager way some stationery has when it wants you to be impressed before you even read it. Inside, the letter wears perfume and posture. From the offices of Hartwell and Smythe, it begins. The ampersand padded like a lapdog, it demands immediate return of gifts. A voluntary contribution to offset reputational harm. And a promise to stop defamatory chatter about a certain gentleman who loves glossy nouns. There's a paragraph about marital expectations, which is adorable given the celebrant's note that nothing legal occurred. There's even a sentence suggesting temporary support from us to him. Joke 1 taps the envelope, whispering, "Is the audacity complimentary, or do they bill by the ounce?" I put the letter under a glass like a spider that needs study, then text Mara mail from a law firm. No panic, soup and nouns at noon. She replies with a steady ... and on break at 12:10. Bring the envelope. Also, bring your calm. My calm puts on its sensible shoes. Academic phrase of the day, slap. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. The public argument that some folks file scary papers not to win on facts, but to make truth-tellers tired. Broke or quiet. The cure is sunlight, statutes, and people who've seen this weather before. At noon, we sit on a clinic bench that smells like disinfectant and relief. And I slide the envelope over. Mara reads. She doesn't cry. She calibrates. He wants me to pay him for the cost of his mask, she says, voice even. Also to pretend I never saw it slip. She folds the letter twice, sharply, like origami that refuses to become a swan. We'll visit legal aid, I say. Today. She nods, then adds, eyes on the paper. I'm tired of being audience. Elder wisdom reflection. When intimidation knocks, wearing cufflinks. Don't argue with the jewelry, go find the calendar and the statute. Fear bluffs loud. Procedure is a whisper with a badge. We take the bus 2 stops to the legal aid clinic, where waiting chairs practice mercy and the receptionist's cardigan could broker peace. A volunteer attorney named Salma meets us with a pen that writes like it knows verbs. We lay out the celebrant letter, the non-filing note. The bank rewrote freeze, Keaton's bruise that faded into a story he no longer tells with apology. And now this attempt at expensive hush. Salma reads fast, like she wants to catch a train and bring it back just to prove a point. "This is noise," she says, tapping the firm's letter. Elegantly formatted noise. "You owe him nothing. No alimony, no marriage filing, no gift return without strings attached, no payment for reputational bruises caused by his own elbows. You will not sign their contribution form. You will not agree to a muzzle." She drafts a reply on clinic letterhead, polite spine, and includes a phrase I plan to embroider on a towel. Any further contact should be directed to counsel. Quick, quirky sidebar. Those little blue confidential stamps on law firm envelopes are mostly theater. The Postal Service doesn't honor inked wishes. Real confidentiality travels by process server or encrypted courier, not by a font trying to impress a mailbox. Real peace travels by casseroles. Salma also references the state's anti-slap law with the calm of a baker giving a recipe if Pierce sues for defamation because we told the truth. The law can make him pay for the flour and the oven time. She hands Mara a pamphlet, aggressively unglamorous and exactly what we need. "We will file nothing today," she says. "We will send this reply, log every contact, and keep our oxygen for rent and soup. If he escalates, we'll meet him in the bright room with the clock." Outside, the sky has the decency to be ordinary. Mara exhales. "I thought shame and debt were mandatory like taxes," she says. "Turns out I can itemize." Joke 2 nods at the pamphlet. "Look, a coupon for dignity." We ride the bus home in a smaller wind. A woman in scrubs sleeps with courage folded on her lap. An old man hums a hymn only his knees understand. Mara watches the city move and says, "I forgot people live between the club and the courthouse, the actual city, with bus transfers and waiting rooms and bakeries that hand you yesterday's bread. That's where decent lives," I say. "The middle of things." Back home, Keaton bursts in with the gravity of a man who has opinions about shelves. "We're reorganizing hardware aisle 9, he announces. "It's a metaphor, also. Frank says I can go full-time nights if I want." He sees the envelope on the counter. His jaw sets, then unsets at my look. "We visited legal aid," I tell him. "Salma is our noun." He relaxes into the chair he's claimed as a citizen. We install a new tab in the binder, legal, and slide Salma's reply behind it. Paper makes its satisfied thump. I add a sticky note. "If fear calls, schedule it." The house approves, wood creaking like a chuckle. Afternoon brings chores with process notes. Mara sweeps as promised, because floors deserve vows. Keaton mends a screen and explains how the best patches are honest, you can see where the fix happened. But air flows again, like us. He grins, then blushes at his own poetry and hides in the refrigerator to find the lemonade. We practice the day's other skill, not chasing poisoned assets. The club has a gala photo carousel up Pierce mid-laugh, Mara in ivory at the edge. She hovers a second, then closes the window like a person choosing not to drink ocean water. "I don't want his life back," she says. To the room, to herself. "I want mine." We nod, not like a Greek chorus, more like a family forming a quorum. Around 4, Mrs. Alvarez stops by with a pan of arroz con pollo and the gossip that the club's fundraiser has a new anonymous patron. We do not speculate. We do not feed the hydra. We set the pan on a trivet shaped like a rooster and thank the day for something we can reheat. Quick, quirky sidebar, part 2. Paper clips were once so politically charged that Norwegians wore them on lapels during the World War II as quiet resistance. They mean we are linked. I think of that as I slide one onto Salma's reply, small metal solidarity against loud nonsense. Evening arrives with its moderate noises, Keaton wrenching a cap off a jar like a hero, the laundry fan practicing steadiness, a bus sighing out front. We eat arroz and a salad that squeaks approval, and after dishes, Mara reads our rules aloud the way people recite vows they finally understand. 1 public kindness daily, she says. 1 private honesty nightly. She touches the line she added yesterday. Today's kindness, telling Renee the truth without humiliating myself or her. Tonight's honesty, I almost posted a long thread about bravery. I didn't. I washed the floor instead. Joke 3 peeks in. Tidy floor posts get far fewer trolls. We close the evening with a small class I call Phone Resilience 101. We turn off banner notifications. We move social apps to the second screen. We set Do Not Disturb from 10 to 6. We create a new text group called Actual People, which contains exactly 3 names. Keaton adds a photo of the pantry calendar as the group picture. Mascot, he explains. Broom, I remind. Before bed. I stand at the hall photos with Mara. She's in my biggest sweater again. Sleeves pushed up like she wants to cook something necessary out of pointlessness. I thought status was scaffolding. She says quietly. Turns out scaffolding is scaffolding. You build the house yourself. She looks at the frame of 7-year-old her, furious about tights. She would have hated Pierce's shoes. She decides. And we both laugh, the soft kind that hangs in the night like a necklace no one needs to see to know is there. I write my 3 lines with the fan drawing its cursive and the watch refusing swagger. When letters arrive loud, answer with quiet law. We don't chase poison coins, we plant lentils. Any further contact should be directed to counsel doubles as prayer. Lights off. The house exhales. That satisfied timber sigh. Across town, somewhere. A midnight blue suit practices menace in a mirror. Here, we choose muscle memory over menace soup. Sweeping, bus routes, binder tabs, an attorney with a useful pen, a savings jar labeled firsts, and a porch light that continues its small, stubborn vigil. In the morning, there will be charts to scan, a pizza to toss, an aisle 9 taller because a boy understood metaphors, and perhaps another envelope boasting about itself. We'll open it in daylight, we'll measure it for facts, and then, if it's empty swagger, we'll add it to the polite trash and keep our nouns for the work that feeds us. Breakfast tastes like agreement. I set the table with oatmeal that knows how to be steady, toast that volunteers for reliability, and a small saucer of jam because sweetness does better work after nouns. The yellow pad sits between the bowls like a notary. 10 minutes, I say. Then we go earn the day. Mara nods with the calm of someone who can see the shape of a shift. Keaton arrives with bike hair and hardware store wrists. We breathe once together, the house's favorite ritual, and begin. Academic phrase of the day. Implementation intentions. The public argument that you don't just hope to change. You pre-write the exact sentence you'll live by if X happens. Then I will do Y. It's how willpower stops improvising and starts keeping a calendar. We draft 3 if-then lines and tape them to the inside of a cabinet door where recipes live. If Pierce or his orbit calls or writes, then we forward to Salma and go back to stirring soup. If shame shows up at a doorstep wearing sunglasses, then we serve it coffee at the table and name it out loud. If money arrives, then 10% goes to the first jar before any splurges try on outfits. Elder wisdom reflection. Boundaries are best written while your hands are clean and your voice is slow. Tape them at eye level so you don't have to remember them when your chest is loud. Now rent, token for now, I say. Not because I need it, because habits need a drawer. We land on a number that says, dignity without pantomime. It migrates, on payday, into the first jar with the sober clink of a plan learning vowels. Keaton suggests a receipt, grinning. I tear a notebook square and write, rent practice received. then sign it with the flourish my mortgage trained into me. Joke 1 waves its fork. We're a very boutique landlord operation. Amenities include soup and lectures. We hang the chore grid like a modest banner. Mara keeps floors, Keaton keeps lint and screens, I keep porch and soup, trash rotates, because everyone deserves a day to be heroic about banana peels under the grid. We write 1 public kindness daily, 1 private honesty nightly. Rituals that can be done while half asleep are the only kind that last. Quick, quirky sidebar. Why does toast taste like progress? Because the Maillard reaction, heat teaching sugars and amino acids to dance, creates new flavors that signal done to your brain. That's why the second a kitchen smells like toast, people wander in to check maps and make promises. Also, medium brown is the color of most of my best decisions. At 9, Mara heads to the clinic, Keaton pedals to the hardware store. I walk to the pantry with a bag of jars that deserve a second life. On the sidewalk, Mrs. Alvarez waves a lemon like a baton. You are glowing with paperwork, she teases. I confess to the cabinet with rules. Good, she says. Walls deserve reading material. By 10:30, I'm back home, greeting the plumber who's come to quiet the sink's shy rattle. He hums, the pipes answer, the house learns a softer consonant. I print 2 copies of Salma's letter, slide one into the legal tab, and leave the other by the phone like a talisman made of verbs. The binder gives that small, satisfied thump again paper's version of a nod. Noon delivers our meeting with math lunch and the budget. Mara arrives with ink on her fingers and a story about a chart note that said abdominal pain and how the entire office chose mercy instead of grammar. Keaton barrels in, smelling like lumber and basil. Frank had him tear basil for the afternoon's pies, and the scent refuses to clock out. We open the notebook to meals we actually eat, add Tuesday beans with bay leaf, and draw a tiny leaf in the margin. Keaton insists on shading it. Joke 2 poses. Leave me alone, it puns. And we groan in the small, necessary way. We test the if-then lines immediately. Keaton's phone buzzes with an unsaved number. He glances at me, flips it face down, and lets it travel to voicemail with the decency of a librarian closing a book at 5 later. We forward the transcription to Salma with a subject line that reads, neatly as discussed. Then we make sandwiches. Sometimes the bravest thing is to choose mayonnaise over theater. Afternoon is the shape of errands. The temp agency calls, Mara says yes to a Thursday phone bank block, then texts me if schedule changes. Then I tell you before we cook. See, I can speak cabinet. I reply with a pear emoji, which in this house is managerial. We walk to look at Keaton's friend's sublet 3rd floor, South Light. A radiator that thunks like a grandfather clearing his throat. The landlord, a woman with a canvas apron and precise eyebrows, speaks in terms I appreciate. First month, deposit, no theatrics. The room is small, honest, and exactly 1 lemon garland length long. Not yet, I say gently to Keaton as the future tries on his face. We're building a slope, not a cliff. He nods. I can see it from here, he says. That is enough for today. Back home. We hold a 3-chair staff meeting with the stove on low. Agenda phones, mail, doors, phones banners off. Do not disturb set. Actual people group thriving. Keaton sends a photo of aisle 9 looking like an after picture. Mail. I promise to open anything embossed in daylight and in company. Mara promises not to read gala carousels. Keaton promises to bring home any stray coupons for bus passes, which is his love language. Doors, we say out loud that this house will not host intimidation, performance, or people who only visit to irrigate their curiosity. The walls seem to appreciate the disclaimer. A soft knock interrupts Renee again, this time holding a foil pan like it's a passport. Baked ziti, she offers, eyes unarmored. I used Google. I take the pan with gratitude that doesn't audition. Join us, I ask. Because kitchens are better at repenting than foyers. She sits on the edge of a chair, then settles as if the chair granted a visa. We've been loud, she says. We didn't look. I'm sorry. Mara meets her halfway. We were loud too, she answers, with our pretending, for once. Nobody reaches for a script that hurts. We eat her Google Success CD beside my salad that squeaks approval. Renee promises a church pantry shift. We promise to tell her if the noodles were under-seasoned. They were not. Quick, quirky sidebar, tiny the foil pan crinkles like tinfoil gratitude. If you wash and flatten it, it answers to baking sheet in a pinch. Economies like that are our new tuxedos. By 5. Keaton heads to Frank's. The boy practically leaves punctuality footprints. Mara sweeps the floors in slow figure eights. A choreography she invented for days that ask for elegant effort. I take the porch, a rag, a rail. The small scrubbing that keeps greetings honest. The maple maps its shadow, and the flood height band at the end of the block winks like a medal the street quietly wears. Evening brings a test of Rule 3. A car idles across the street too long, the luxury kind that sounds like money practicing to be quiet. My spine knows that silhouette. I don't invite adrenaline for tea. I fetch the phone, take a photo, and text Salma possible proximity. No contact. Logging. The car slides away, offended by the lack of theater. I return to the stove and stir on low. Implementation intentions if proximity, then log and continue dinner. The house approves with a timber sigh. We debrief at 9 over lemon tea, Mrs. Alvarez, patron saint of Thursdays. Mara reports 200 charts, 3 tiny human kindnesses, 0 atrium brunches. Keaton reports from Frank's aisle 9 looks like the word upright. A regular said my pizza tastes like a person with a bus pass who shows up, which is my new 5-star review. I report ZD received, rule cabinet admired, luxury car, bored, and gone. Joke 3 taps the cabinet if I add, if neighbors bring ZD, then we lend the pan back with cookies. Will the cabinet get jealous? Mara writes it in anyway, because jealousy is a small price for cookie economics. Before bed, we practice one private honesty nightly. Mine, I wanted to gloat when the car left. I chose to stir instead. Mara's? I tried to imagine one more dress photo. I closed the window and swept. Keaton's I hoped Frank would call me family. He called me staff, and I learned I like that more. I write my 3 lines while the fan keeps faithful time. Habits are quieter than vows and twice as loyal. If-then sentences are tiny bridges. Cross them daily. Medium brown toast. Medium soft hearts. Medium wrist days, the recipe works. Lights lower themselves like considerate curtains. The porch light keeps its shift. Somewhere. A letter tries to emboss its way into mattering, here. We hang our rules at eye level. We pay our practice rent into a jar with dignity. We answer loud with lawful and performative with procedural. And we keep breakfast ready because boundaries work best when served warm. Tomorrow. Mara's on phones, Keaton's on dough, I'm on soup. And the first jar will sound like a jar that believes in us. That's enough future for now. The house knows it. The maple agrees, and even the broom looks satisfied, leaning just so. Wednesday wears work clothes. Mara's on phones at the clinic, Keaton's on dough, I'm on soup and paperwork, which in this house are cousins. The first jar gets 2 5s before breakfast, not because the amount is grand, but because the habit is small coins, learning to sit up straight. I set beans to simmer with a bay leaf and let the kitchen smell like a plan that minds its manners. At 10. Salma emails subject line neat, tone calmer than a librarian. She sent our reply to Hartwell and Smythe and copied Pierce's assistant, the one who smiles in voicemails. The last sentence is a lullaby with a spine. Any further contact should be directed to counsel. It reads like a porch light that never blinks. Academic phrase of the day, sunk cost fallacy. The public argument that just because you've spent time, money, or pride on something, you must keep spending to justify it. Today, we choose the opposite stop paying for a mask that already cracked. By noon. Soup is ready, and so are we. Mara arrives with headset hair and a new affection for mute buttons. I handled 30 calls, she says, and only one tried to sell me a miracle supplement. She opens the cabinet and taps the if-then rules with 2 fingers like knocking on a friendly door. Keaton pedals in on the last gust of lunchtime, wrists flour-dusted, grinning like a boy who's been called consistent twice in one morning. We eat with that particular silence that belongs to 3 people who have already used up their adjectives responsibly and are now letting broth explain the day. After dishes, we do a modest census of progress, rent jar humming, job board boxes checked, legal tab 1 letter, 1 answer. No new fireworks. I text Miss Alvarez a photo of our public kindness line for the day. Keaton carried groceries up the stairs for the lady on the 2nd floor. Mara brought extra headsets to the phone room, then head out to the pantry with 2 clean jars and the pleasure of errands that do not perform. Quick, quirky sidebar, the word, okay? Most likely got popular in the 1840s from a jokey misspelling. All correct. Telegraph operators adopted okay as quick confirmation message received. Nothing on fire. I think of that each time my phone vibrates with a single letter from Keaton K, and I exhale like a telegraph line done with drama. Elder wisdom reflection, don't confuse tidy chaos for peace. True steadiness is repetitive. A patient drum. Build it in the hour before trouble thinks to knock. Mid-afternoon. Legal aid calls. Salma's colleague can swing by to notarize a short affidavit, pure procedure. A tidy umbrella in case the weather gets ideas. I lay out the binder, brew lemon tea, and find 2 pens that don't squeak. The house approves of pens that behave. The doorbell's knock is human-sized, not Salma. Renee stands there, sunglasses on top of her head like a surrendered crown, holding a paper bag that says, bakery, but smells like apology. For your Thursday soup, she says, handing over day-old rolls and the kind of smile people wear when they've practiced in the mirror and decided against it. And I signed up for the pantry shift. She swallows. Saturday morning, bring shoes you can ignore, I say. Joke 1 tugs the bag, and a pen that likes forms. Renee laughs, grateful to be told a job instead of a secret. At 3, Keaton's friend texts the sublet will open next month for certain. Radiator inspected, lease tidy, first month modest, deposit sane. I show the message to the first jar and it pretends not to preen. We pencil a date on the calendar with a responsible heart beside it. When Keaton asks, eyes trying on independence like a jacket that might fit. Soon, I say. We want a slope, remember, not a cliff. He nods, then checks the chore grid like a man who understands that leaving well includes taking out Thursday's trash. On my walk to the mailbox. The street rehearses normal a mail carrier with calves like civic pride. A dog dragging its good owner toward a patch of gossip. A teenager practicing skateboard physics with admirable humility. The box holds 2 envelopes that matter and 1 that pretends to. We keep the water bill, we keep the clinic schedule, we feed the Legacy Gala special update to the polite trash without letting it explain itself. Sunk cost has a clever voice. Trash cans have better boundaries. Back home. I find Mara on the phone practicing a kind of speaking that doesn't inflate high. This is Mara at the clinic. I'm calling to reschedule your lap draw. We have a better slot for you tomorrow. She listens the way good rooms listen. When she hangs up, she beams as if someone handed her a noun she'd misplaced. Usefulness, she says, holding it up. I remember this. Keaton breezes in for a 10-minute mid-shift, wipes his face with a towel that doesn't care about brands, and tests a slice of cooling bread like a scientist. Frank wants me to train new hires, he says. said I teach without boring. Joke 2 raises a flowery eyebrow, the highest praise in a kitchen. He heads back out, promising to bring home a staff pie because generosity is one of Frank's house policies. At 5, Salma arrives with her colleague and a notary stamped the shape of closure. We sign our tidy affidavit dates. Fax. No ornament. The stamp presses down with that satisfying thought that law uses when it wants to communicate. Enough posture. Here is ink. We talk briefly about what escalation looks like and what it doesn't. If there's noise, Salma says, we won't duet with it. We'll file, or we won't. Either way, you keep your schedule. She eyes the cabinet rules and smiles. That's better than half my client's case strategy. We send them off with soup to go and a promise of fresh bread on their next round. Knight leans in carefully. Keaton returns with the staff pie like a trophy and collapses into his chair with that particular exhaustion that makes sleep feel like a paycheck. We light the smallest candle and call it dinner ambience because fancy can be rented for 30 minutes if you don't ask it to explain itself. Mara shares a win the phone bank wants her for Fridays. And the clinic can keep her on charts 3 mornings a week for a month. Cross-training, B said, which is HR for stick around. You're useful. We clink glasses of water as if they were crystal that learned humility. The door across the street opens, a car idles, a silhouette hesitates. I do not narrate. I take a photo from the porch. Text Salma possible proximity again. And then step back into my kitchen where the pie has already been sliced. Implementation intention number 1 if proximity, then log and continue dinner. We continue dinner. The car leaves. Drama. Outvoted. Tries another block. Quick, quirky sidebar, thermal receipt paper turns black if you rub a warm coin across it. Heat activates the die. It's a party trick and a reminder that not all records are permanent. Our binder is old school pens. Stamps, copies. We keep the kinds of proofs that don't darken just because someone tried to make them hot. We finish with our rhythms, public kindness, private honesty. Mara's kindness, letting a caller vent about their fear without correcting a single mispronunciation. Her honesty, she almost searched Pierce plus gala donor. Then decided the most radical thing she could do was sweep. Keaton's kindness, he fixed a neighbor's wobbly mailbox after closing without charging because he was tired of watching letters fall. His honesty, he wanted Frank to call him family again. He realized crew is the better word. Mine, I wanted to write a speech to the car across the street. I wrote grocery math instead. Joke 3 taps the pear magnet. Tomorrow is payday practice. We will celebrate with toast. Mara groans. Keaton salutes the Millard reaction like a veteran. Before bed. I open the shoebox and pick one photo by feel. Mara at 9. Missing a front tooth. Holding a science fair ribbon she won for timing how long it takes toast at 3 settings. She looks ferocious with pride. Slightly sticky. She liked medium brown, even then, I say. Mara laughs. And for a second, she is both that child and this woman. Intact. I add 3 lines to my notebook with the fan writing its patient cursive and the watch refusing swagger. We are not funding the past to prove it mattered. Okay is enough for a day message received. Nothing on fire. Peace is not silent. It's repetitive. Lights lower like sensible curtains. The porch light keeps its shift. Across town. Someone in a midnight coat will rehearse menace into a mirror and call it legacy. Here. We will set the timer on the coffee. Label the soup. Check the bus card balance. And put 2 more singles in the first jar. Tomorrow, Keaton will show a new hire how to listen to dough. Mara will move from charts to phones without shedding nouns. I will hunt bay leaves like quiet heroes. We are poor in spectacles and rich in procedure. The cabinet rules hold. The binder purrs. And the house, this faithful box of air and wood rests the way a ship does when its crew has finally learned the route by heart. Payday practice feels like a holiday with better shoes. We meet at the table with oatmeal, a calculator, and the first jar sitting up straight like a student who studied. Mara lays down her chart-scanning check and her phone bank slip. Keaton sets his pizza envelope on the table with the solemnity of a small parade. Before anything, I say, tapping the cabinet where our if-then rules live, 10%. Coins and bills shuffle in with a sound I'd buy on vinyl. The jar glows a little. Or maybe that's us. Academic phrase of the day, percent bias. The public argument that brains overrate right now and underestimate later. Our cure is a mason jar with a label, a bus card with balance, and a calendar with soup on Thursdays. We don't fight the brain, we give it friendlier right nows. We sort the rest with humane math. Rent practice gets its dignified note. Groceries get a handshake. The bus card learns to breathe easier. I slide $2 into a tiny envelope labeled "Thank You Tips the Bakery." Legal Aid's coffee pot. Mrs. Alvarez's lemon fund. Joke 1 nudges the pile. Our tipping policy, I declare. Rewards institutions that feed us or file for us. Keaton salutes with a spoon. Mara grins like a person who remembers enjoying small systems. A text from Salma arrives short. Blessedly dull, acknowledged by opposing counsel. No further contact. Login closed unless escalations. We look at each other in the clean hush that follows a good sentence. We didn't duet with the noise, Mara says. We kept our schedule. I answer. We high-five the binder. It tolerates us with a papery harumph. Elder wisdom reflection. Crisis wants your whole stage. Give it a chair in the corner. Hand it a glass of water. And keep cooking. If it misbehaves, show it the door if it quiets. Let it watch you be ordinary. The day asks to be spent. We pay it with errands that grow roots. Mara buys 2 pairs of clinic-appropriate shoes at the thrift, each labeled in the universe's handwriting, useful. Keaton buys a second-hand toolbox from the hardware manager at a friendly discount. For the sublet, he says, trying on the word like a solid jacket. We buy flour because bread is patient and a single lemon because flair has tenure. Quick, quirky sidebar pennies cost more than a penny to mint, roughly 1.5 cents in materials and manufacturing some years. They're a loss the government tolerates for habit's sake. I think about that as I drop a few into the first jar. Not all inefficiency is foolish. Sometimes you keep the ritual because it keeps you. We celebrate with egg night moved to lunch scrambled. Green onions. Toast exactly medium brown. We salt with thrift and confidence. Keaton teaches us how to fold a dollar bill into a tiny shirt. I iron 3 napkins because pomp belongs to everyone. We eat like a trio who has decided we prefer competence to spectacle and have discovered, to our private delight, that competence has flavor. The afternoon has the shape of good work. Mara heads to the clinic and returns with a small envelope and a smile that knows its own wattage. B says they can extend me 2 months. She reports. 3 mornings, phones on Fridays. Health credit starts then, too. She blushes. I filled out the form that asks what name should be printed on my badge. I wrote Mara, last name. Just that. The simplicity is its own banquet. Keaton bikes to Frank's and comes back later with oregano in his hair and a story about training a new hire who thinks dough is a suggestion. You listen with your palms, he told the kid. When it stops talking, you stretch. Frank clapped once from the oven like a civic award. I like being staff, Keaton says, meaning crew, meaning paid member of a system that works. Family is for home. Mid-afternoon. Renee texts a blurry photo of herself at the pantry in very unacceptable shoes and a caption, "Next time sneakers." Also, lentils are heavy. We send her a thumb and a soup emoji. Optics are exhausted. Usefulness is contagious. A letter arrives addressed to me, for once, the clinic's volunteer coordinator, inviting Thursday soup resurrected. I stick it under the pear magnet next to our if-then list. If the world is in crisis. I write beneath, then we will still eat at 6, the cabinet approves, it enjoys addendums that clean up after hope. Dinner time is a sandwich on the porch. The kind of meal that doesn't need applause because the maple provides an audience of light and the flood height band winks like a merit badge across the street. The car that sounded like money not trying to be seen hasn't returned. Maybe the quiet law worked. Maybe boredom did. Either way. I decide not to narrate menace that isn't present. The porch rewards me with the smell of neighbor's laundry, which I've decided is my new favorite cologne. After dishes. We hold a tiny graduation for the cabinet rules. They're working, Mara says. Can we frame them? I laugh and fetch a thrifted frame from the hall closet. We center the sheet with the clean tape and the if-then rows, and for once, a house rule gets to be art. Joke 2 poses in the glass open concept applies. Only to kindness, looks good with a border. Night brings a calendar page we've been courting. Keaton's sublet start date comes through. Deposit reduced for tools and general competency. The landlord. Precise eyebrows and canvas apron. Adds a note. You may borrow my drill. You return it on time. Keaton beams. Later. He and I sit with his budget like two mechanics admiring a reliable engine. You'll still do dinner here twice a week, I say. Thursday soup is non-negotiable. Also, lint trap tutorials continue. Serve filter, he promises, hand to chest. Mara lingers at the hall photographs, then disappears into the guest room and returns with a shoebox. For you, she says, handing me a single envelope inside. Don't worry, no law firm letterhead. It's a print from a photo Renee had snapped at the pantry, the three of us stocking a shelf. Faces, unarranged, hands mid-task, on the back. Mara has written us, no optics. I slide it onto the hall wall between 7-year-old tights and the science fair toast. The wall seems to understand. Quick, quirky sidebar, last one. Let me have it when you sleep in a new place. Your brain keeps one hemisphere a little more alert in case of saber-toothed tigers or unfamiliar refrigerators. It's called the first night effect. We decide Keaton's first night in the sublet will be followed by Friday nap privileges on my couch, opt-in sanctuary for hemispheres that need a memo. We end with our liturgy. Public kindness. Mara walked an elder caller through the phone tree until press 2 sounded like a victory. Keaton fixed a sticky door at work without making a speech. I delivered a jar of sauce to a neighbor who just had a baby and said nothing about legacy beyond naps are holy. Private honesty. Mara admits she took the long way home to avoid the club's street and was proud of the avoidance. Keaton confesses he wanted a photo of his hands tossing the perfect dough, but kept his phone in his pocket. I admit, I drafted. In my head. A witty letter to Pierce and then recycled it without printing. We set the coffee for morning, label the leftovers for tomorrow's lunch, and stack bowls with the precision of people who sleep better when corners align. The fan writes its lullaby cursive. The watch keeps time without swagger. The house does its satisfied wooden exhale. I add 3 final lines to the notebook. We are small on purpose and large in the right places. Present bias shrinks when the jar sings. Peace has chores. Lights low. The porch lamp maintains its civil service. The maple paints the floor with approval. The first jar watches the room like a proud cousin. Tomorrow. Keaton signs his simple lease. Mara gets her badge with only her name. I put soup back on the clinic schedule and buy stamps to thank the people who taught us nouns when adjectives were loud. We do not own a club membership. We own a broom, a binder, a bus card with balance, a framed rule that makes strangers smile, and the soft ambition to keep showing up. It is. I realize as sleep arrives. A different kind of rich. Tonight's road took the quiet way through a kitchen that prefers medium brown toast and rules taped at eye level. We started with a grandson's guilty smirk and a daughter's ivory wedding we weren't invited to. We passed by a club that pronounces optics like a sacrament and a man in a midnight coat whose nouns did more harm than gravity. Pride tried to annex a life. We answered with paper a trust of habits, a binder of letters. A legal aid reply that ended with direct further contact to counsel. A cabinet frame that reads, "Open concept applies only to kindness." We learned the bureaucracy of ordinary bus routes that keep their promises. Temp agency chairs, chart scanning accuracy, dough that listens, lint traps that night boys into surfilter. A firsts jar that trains tomorrow to stand up straight. We traded symbolic capital for bread that rises. A porch that witnesses. And a neighborhood that brings lemons and baked ziti without needing a caption. We used small laws anti-slap, notarized on affidavits, 3 if-then lines to keep the loud outside while we stirred on low. The daughter apologized with nouns and showed her repentance with floors and phones. The grandson found crew instead of family at work and liked the word better. The mother, our narrator, kept the fans cursive and the watches humility. Her elder wisdom saying, "Give crisis a chair and a glass of water. Then keep cooking." A car hovered and grew bored. A gala mailed envelopes and found the polite trash. The framed rule became art. The sublet found a date. The pantry found new hands. By the end, keys didn't change. People did. Thursday soup returned to the calendar. The jar sang, "Peace proved repetitive, not silent." We didn't defeat a dragon. We outlasted a performance. And we chose the unfancy wealth of procedure, kindness, and schedules that open the same way every time.